shattered dreams. The delicate whisk trembled in Fiona Walsh's hand as she stared at the plastic pregnancy test on her apartment's bathroom counter. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. At 26, with her culinary career just beginning to blossom, at a local bakery in Portland, this wasn't part of her 5-year plan. But as the initial shock subsided, a tentative smile spread across her face. "Lucas will understand," she whispered to her reflection. "We'll figure this out together." Lucas Bennett came from old money. His family owned a chain of luxury hotels across the Pacific Northwest. Their relationship had been a whirlwind. He'd swept into the bakery where she worked 8 months ago, charmed by her signature lavender macarons and warm laugh. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, his filled with charity galas and board meetings, hers with early mornings and flour-dusted aprons, but somehow they'd fit. That evening, Fiona prepared Lucas's favorite dinner: rosemary lamb, chops with garlic mashed potatoes. She set the table with care, placing a small box beside his plate. Inside was the positive pregnancy test, wrapped in a tiny knitted bootie she'd impulsively purchased on her way home. When Lucas arrived, his normally relaxed demeanor seemed strained. He barely touched his food, checking his phone repeatedly. "Is everything okay?" Fiona asked, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "Just work stress," he muttered. "Dad's pressuring me to take over the Seattle property." Fiona took a deep breath. "I have something that might take your mind. Off work." She slid the box toward him. Lucas opened it, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to something darker. "Is this some kind of joke?" "I'm pregnant," Fiona said, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "About 8 weeks. The silence that followed felt endless. When Lucas finally spoke, his voice was cold, detached. "This isn't going to work, Fiona." What do you mean?" "This," he gestured between them, then at the box. "All of it. I'm not ready to be a father. My family has expectations. The Bennett name—" Fiona felt as though she were suddenly underwater, Lucas's words becoming muffled as panic rose in her chest. "We can make it work," she pleaded. "I don't expect anything from your family." "Don't be naive," Lucas snapped. "My parents would never accept this situation. A child out of wedlock with a—" He caught himself, but not before Fiona understood what he'd been about to say. A baker, a nobody. He stood abruptly. "I can help with arrangements, financially, if you decide not to keep it." Fiona recoiled as if slapped. "Get out!" "Be reasonable, Fiona. We've been dating for months, not years. This was never supposed to be serious. Get out." Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steel. The following weeks passed in a blur of grief and nausea. Lucas's lawyer contacted her with paperwork, a settlement offer in exchange for her silence and agreement to never seek child support. Her boss at the bakery gently suggested she take a less visible role after her pregnancy began to show. Her tiny apartment suddenly seemed too expensive on her reduced income. One morning, hunched over the toilet after another bout of morning sickness, Fiona caught a glimpse of her grandmother's old wooden spoon on the counter, the one she'd used to teach Fiona to bake. "Walsh women don't break," Gran had always said. "We rise." Wiping her mouth, Fiona stood shakily and picked up the spoon. Something hardened within her, like caramel crystallizing into brittle. She wouldn't chase Lucas. She wouldn't beg. She would rise. That afternoon, she called the lawyer and rejected the settlement. Then she began searching for a second job. Her child deserved better than a mother who surrendered at the first sign of trouble, and Fiona deserved better than a man who only loved her when it was convenient. Whispers of courage. The summer heat pressed against the windows of Patrice's diner as Fiona balanced 3 plates along her arm. 4 months pregnant and working double shifts had become her new normal. Her morning hours at the bakery had been reduced to part-time, forcing her to take this waitressing job to make ends meet. Her feet ached, her back protested, but her resolve remained unbroken. "Order up for table 7, she called, sliding the plates of blueberry pancakes across the counter to her coworker. "You should sit down for a minute," said Donna, the 60-something, manager with nicotine-stained fingers and kind eyes. "That little one needs a rest, too." Fiona smiled gratefully but shook her head. "Can't afford to. Saturday morning rush pays the bills." What Donna didn't know was that after her shift ended at 3 p.m., Fiona would return to her apartment to bake. Small custom orders she'd secured through word of mouth, birthday cakes, anniversary pastries, special occasion desserts. Her tiny kitchen had become both sanctuary and workshop. Last week, she'd finally gathered the courage to create business cards. Fiona's Flour and Sugar, bespoke pastries. They were simple, printed at the local copy shop, but seeing her name on them had brought the first genuine smile to her face in months. The bell above the diner door jingled. A tall man with broad shoulders and warm bronze skin entered, his eyes scanning the crowded room before settling on the only available seat at the counter. Fiona approached with a coffee pot. "Morning. Just coffee, or are you having breakfast?" she asked, filling his cup. The man looked up from his phone, revealing intelligent eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. "Actually, I'm meeting someone. Reservation, under Navarro." Fiona checked her notepad. "Mr. Navarro, the back booth is ready. Your guest hasn't arrived yet." "It's Javier," he corrected with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "And thank you." "Fiona," she supplied, leading him to the booth. "Fiona," he repeated, settling in. "That's a beautiful name." A compliment shouldn't have felt so foreign, but Lucas's absence had left a void that seemed to swallow all light. Fiona felt her cheeks warm as she handed him a menu. "I'll check back when your guest arrives." Throughout her shift, Fiona noticed Javier's meeting seemed intense. He spread blueprints across the table, gesturing animatedly as he spoke with an older gentleman in an expensive suit. She overheard fragments, location, concept, timeline, as she refilled their coffee cups. Near the end of her shift, as the diner emptied, Javier approached the counter where Fiona was folding napkins. "Thank you for the excellent service," he said, leaving a generous tip. "You're welcome. Successful meeting?" He grinned. "I hope so. I'm opening a restaurant downtown. Races. It means roots in Spanish. Farm-to-table concept, but with flavors from my grandmother's kitchen in Mexico City." "That sounds wonderful," Fiona said genuinely. "Portland needs more authentic cuisine." "What it really needs," Javier said, "is excellent desserts. My pastry chef just backed out." Fiona's heart skipped. Before she could stop herself, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out one of her homemade business cards. "I might know someone." Javier studied the card, then looked at Fiona with new interest. "You're a pastry chef?" "Trained at Portland Culinary, worked at Amelie's Bakery until—" She gestured to her growing belly. "Now I'm freelancing while figuring out next steps." Something flickered in Javier's eyes. Not pity, but recognition. "My sister had her first child at 19. Raised him while building her law practice." He tucked the card into his pocket. "Do you have a portfolio?" "Just Instagram for now," Fiona admitted. "But I can bring samples." "Please do. Tomorrow, 2 p.m.? He scribbled an address on a napkin. "No pressure, just a conversation." After he left, Donna sidled up beside her. "That man was looking at you like you hung the moon." "He was looking at me like a potential business connection," Fiona corrected, but couldn't help the flutter of hope in her chest. That night, Fiona baked until dawn. Chocolate souffle with chili-infused caramel, tres leches cake with honey lavender, cinnamon churros with Mexican chocolate ganache. As she worked, the baby kicked rhythmically, as if keeping time with her movements. "This is for us," she whispered, one hand on her belly. "Our new beginning." The following day, Javier sampled each creation with closed eyes and appreciative murmurs. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair. I can't offer full time yet. We're months from opening. But I need someone to develop the dessert menu, create recipes, train staff eventually. Contract work to start, with potential for more. It wasn't everything, but it was something. A step forward, a door opening. Fiona extended her hand. When do we start? That evening, she sat at her tiny kitchen table, calculating numbers. The contract with Javier, combined with her other jobs, would just barely cover expenses. But for the first time since Lucas walked out, Fiona didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she was climbing. On her refrigerator, she pinned a new ultrasound photo next to Javier's business card. Your mama's figuring it out, she told the grainy image. One recipe at a time. Rising from ashes, the February rain tapped against the windows of Races as Fiona carefully arranged sugar flowers on a 3-tiered cake. 6 months had passed since her first meeting with Javier, and his restaurant was now weeks away from its grand opening. The empty dining room, with its exposed brick walls and reclaimed wood tables, had become her sanctuary during off hours. You're here early. Javier's voice echoed in the quiet space as he entered, shaking raindrops from his jacket. Olivia wakes up at 5 these days, Fiona replied, not looking up from her delicate work. Might as well be productive. Her daughter, now 4 months old, was spending the morning with Donna from the diner, who had become an unexpected surrogate grandmother figure. The arrangement wasn't perfect, but it worked. Another piece in the intricate puzzle Fiona had constructed to hold her life together. Javier approached, studying the cake with admiration. This is for the photo shoot tomorrow? Fiona nodded. Food. Magazines want drama. This should deliver. The cake was a masterpiece of Mexican-inspired flavors, cinnamon chocolate layers with dulce de leche filling, decorated with handcrafted sugar calla lilies and marigolds in vibrant orange and yellow. It's incredible, Javier said softly. Then, clearing his throat, he added, I actually came to show you something. He unrolled a set of blueprints across the steel prep table. The building next door, the landlord finally agreed to lease it. To us. For storage? Fiona asked, wiping her hands on her apron. For this? Javier pointed to handwritten notes in the margins. Dulce, a dessert bar connected to Races but with its own identity. Pastries during the day? Desserts and coffee in the evening? Fiona's hands stilled. You're expanding before we even open? I'm securing the space, Javier clarified. The actual build-out would be phase 2, maybe 6 months after we open. If Raíces succeeds. It will, Fiona said with certainty. She'd watched Javier work tirelessly, perfecting recipes, building relationships with local farmers, creating a space that honored his heritage while embracing Portland's culinary scene. The faux. Thing is, Javier continued, his eyes meeting hers, I don't want to run Dulce. I want you to. The sugar flower in Fiona's hand trembled slightly. What? Your desserts are the most exciting part of our menu. You've created something unique, traditional techniques with unexpected twists. He gestured to the blueprints. This could be yours. Partnership, profit sharing, creative control. Fiona's mind raced. The opportunity was everything she'd dreamed of, but the timing felt impossible. Javier, I have a baby. I can barely manage now with contract hours. Running a business. Which is why we start slow. You design the concept while working here. When we're ready to build, we bring in staff you train. He hesitated. My sister will be moving to Portland next month with her son. She mentioned needing part-time childcare for him. Maybe you two could help each other, Fiona finished, a small smile forming. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a possibility. One more than she'd had yesterday. That evening, sitting in her apartment, Slightly larger than her previous one, but still modest, Fiona created a vision board for Dulcie. Olivia slept. Peacefully in her bassinet nearby, her tiny features relaxed in sleep. So much of her resembled Lucas, the shape of her eyes, the curve of her mouth. Yet Fiona couldn't find bitterness anymore when she looked at her daughter. Only gratitude for the tiny human who had become her purpose. Her phone buzzed with a text. From Javier. Chef Montoya from Taste of Portland confirmed for opening night. Said he's specifically coming for your chocolate tres leches cake. Pride bloomed in Fiona's chest. A year ago, she'd been hiding in the back of a bakery, ashamed of her growing belly. Now, respected chefs were coming to taste her creations. The Night of Races' opening arrived with a flurry of excitement. The restaurant was packed, reservations booked solid for weeks in advance thanks to Javier's connections, and a glowing preview in Portland Monthly. Fiona moved efficiently through the kitchen, plating desserts with precision despite the chaos. During a rare quiet moment, she slipped into the dining room to observe the guests' reactions. At a corner table sat a familiar figure, Lucas, accompanied by an elegant woman dripping in jewelry. His eyes widened when he spotted Fiona, but she was called back to the kitchen before he could approach. Later, as service wound down, Javier found her boxing leftover pastries. Someone's asking for the pastry chef, he said, a curious expression on his face. Table 12. Lucas is here, Fiona stated flatly. I saw him earlier. Javier's posture stiffened. You don't have to speak to him. Actually, Fiona said, removing her apron. I think I do. She walked to the dining room with her head high, no longer the devastated girl who had crumpled when he left. Lucas stood awkwardly by his table, his companion gone. Your desserts, he began. They're exceptional. Thank you, Fiona replied, her voice steady. I heard you had the baby, he said, shifting uncomfortably. A girl? Olivia. She's beautiful and healthy. Lucas nodded, running a hand through his expensively cut hair. Fiona, I've been thinking about us. There is no us, she interrupted gently. Not anymore. From across the room, Javier caught her eye, his presence a silent offer of support. Fiona smiled at him briefly before turning back to Lucas. I should thank you, she said. Walking away was the kindest thing you could have done. It forced me to become stronger than I ever thought possible. As she returned to the kitchen, Fiona realized the hollowness that had lived in her chest for so long had finally been filled, not with forgiveness or bitterness, but with something far more powerful, the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Sweet success. 3 years had transformed Dulcie from a concept scribbled on blueprints to a Portland institution. The dessert bar's distinctive blue awning had become a beacon for locals and tourists alike, with lines often stretching down the block for Fiona's seasonal pastry boxes. What had begun as Racis's sister establishment had blossomed into a brand of its own, with Fiona's creations featured in national magazines and a cookbook deal in the works. Mommy, can I put the sprinkles on? Olivia stood on her step stool beside Fiona, her dark curls secured in twin puffs, chubby fingers reaching for the colorful jar. Just a few, sweetheart. Fiona guided her daughter's hand over the tray of conchas. These are for the Children's Hospital fundraiser. At nearly 4, Olivia was already showing signs of inheriting her mother's culinary instincts, insisting on helping in the test kitchen Fiona had built in their new craftsman-style home in southeast Portland. The house was modest compared to what some of Fiona's celebrity clients owned, but it was hers, purchased with the profits from Dulcie's first 2 years and a small business loan Javier had helped her secure. Perfect job, Liv, Fiona praised, sliding the pastries into the oven. Her phone buzzed with a calendar alert. PNW Food and Wine Festival, final planning meeting, 2 p.m. The festival was the highlight of Portland's culinary calendar, and this year, Fiona had been asked not just to participate, but to host the dessert showcase. It was an honor typically reserved for chefs with decades of experience, not 30-year-olds who'd opened their first business less than 3 years ago. "Ready for your play date with Carmen?" Fiona asked, helping Olivia wash her hands. "Yes, she's teaching me Spanish words," Olivia responded excitedly. Carmen, Javier's niece, had become Olivia's best friend, the two girls inseparable despite their 2-year age difference. Their friendship had been an unexpected blessing of Fiona's arrangement with Javier's sister, Elena, who now managed the administrative side of Dulce while sharing childcare duties with Fiona. After dropping Olivia at Elena's house, Fiona arrived at the downtown hotel hosting the festival. The meeting room was filled with Portland's culinary elite, established restaurant owners, James Beard Award winners, wine country royalty. Among them stood Javier, now a celebrated chef in his own right, Races having earned critical acclaim for its innovative approach to traditional Mexican cuisine. "The woman of the hour," he greeted her with a warm hug. Their relationship had evolved over the years into a deep friendship built on mutual respect and shared ambition. If there were moments when Fiona caught him looking at her with something more than friendship, she had carefully tucked those observations away, focusing instead on building her business and raising Olivia. As the meeting progressed, Fiona presented her vision for the dessert pavilion, a journey through the Pacific Northwest's indigenous ingredients reimagined through multicultural techniques. Her confidence, as she addressed the room, reflected her growth from the shattered young woman who had once hidden her pregnancy behind bakery counters. "Ms. Walsh," called a voice as the meeting adjourned. Fiona turned to find Veronica Harding, editor of Culinary Quarterly, approaching with a tablet in hand. "I'd love to feature Dulce in our Rising Stars issue. Your story is compelling. Single mother creates award-winning dessert empire practically overnight." "Hardly overnight," Fiona laughed. "But I'd be honored." "Excellent. We'll need to schedule a photo shoot, interview." Veronica scrolled through her calendar, then paused, glancing over Fiona's shoulder. "Oh, perfect timing. We're also featuring Bennett Hotels' new farm-to-table restaurant concept. Lucas, come meet Fiona Walsh, though perhaps you two already know each other? The Portland food scene is so interconnected." Fiona's spine stiffened as Lucas appeared beside them, looking both polished and uncomfortable in an expertly tailored suit. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of her. "We're acquainted," Fiona said simply, extending her hand professionally. "Hello, Lucas." "Fiona," he replied, his grip tentative. "Congratulations on all your success. Your feature in Bon Appetit was impressive." "Thank you," she said, surprised by his knowledge of her press coverage. Veronica, sensing the undercurrent, excused herself to take a call. Once alone, Lucas cleared his throat. "I've been following your career," he admitted. "What you've built is remarkable." "It hasn't been easy," Fiona replied, her tone neutral. "I can imagine." He hesitated. How is she?" Something protective flared in Fiona. "Olivia is wonderful, bright, creative, kind. Everything a mother could hope for." Lucas nodded, genuine regret crossing his features. "I've thought often about reaching out, about meeting her." "Why haven't you?" Fiona asked, more curious than accusatory. "Fear," he admitted. "Fear that I don't deserve to know her, that you'd refuse, rightfully so." Before Fiona could respond, Javier appeared at her side, his hand settling lightly on her lower back in a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his eyes assessing Lucas with thinly veiled suspicion. "Fine," Fiona assured him. "Lucas was just congratulating us on the festival showcase." "The showcase is all Fiona," Javier said proudly. "I'm just along for the ride." Lucas's gaze flickered between them, noting their easy familiarity. "You two are business partners," Fiona supplied, though the label felt inadequate for what Javier had become in her life. And friends, Javier added, extending his hand to Lucas. Javier Navarro, I own Racy's. Recognition dawned on Lucas's face. Of course. Your restaurant's collaboration has been the talk of the industry. Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement that the venue tour was beginning. As they joined the group, Fiona found herself walking between the two men, Lucas, a ghost from her past who had once shattered her world, and Javier, the steadfast presence who had helped her rebuild it. Later that evening, as Fiona tucked Olivia into bed, her daughter asked unexpectedly, "Mommy, why don't I have a daddy like Carmen has Uncle Javier?" The question caught Fiona off guard. Everyone's family is different, sweetheart. Some have daddies, some have two mommies, some have grandparents who raised them. But where is my daddy? Fiona chose her words carefully. Your daddy lives in Portland, but he hasn't been part of our family. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that take them in different directions. Does he know about me? He does, Fiona said softly, brushing a curl from Olivia's forehead. Do you think he'd like me if he met me? Fiona's heart constricted. Oh, Liv, anyone who knows you loves you. That's just how special you are. As Olivia drifted to sleep, Fiona retreated to her kitchen, baking to process her emotions as she always did. The encounter with Lucas had unsettled her more than she cared to admit, stirring questions she thought she'd resolved years ago. By midnight, she had produced 3 experimental tarts and no answers. Her doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, she saw Javier holding a bottle of wine and wearing a concerned expression. I thought you might be stress baking, he said when she opened the door. Thought you could use company. As they sat at her kitchen island, sampling tarts and sipping wine, Fiona realized that while Lucas's reappearance had shaken her, it hadn't, devastated her. She had built something too solid to crumble, a business, a home, a life filled with people who chose to stay, and sitting across from her was the man who had never once walked away. A table set for joy golden evening light streamed through Dulcie's windows as Fiona adjusted the table settings one final time. The dessert bar had been closed to the public for this private event, a celebration of the 5th anniversary of Races and the 3rd anniversary of Dulcie. White hydrangeas and blush peonies adorned the tables, their subtle fragrance mingling with the scent of fresh pastries. Is this right, Mommy? Olivia asked, carefully placing name cards beside each plate. At 6, she took her role as junior hostess very seriously, her blue dress matching the custom plates Fiona had commissioned for the occasion. Perfect, sweetheart, Fiona assured her. You're the best assistant I could ask for. The past 2 years had brought changes Fiona could never have anticipated. Following their encounter at the food festival, Lucas had reached out formally through his lawyer, requesting the opportunity to meet Olivia. After weeks of deliberation and conversations with a family therapist, Fiona had agreed to supervised visits that had gradually evolved into a cordial co-parenting relationship. Lucas would never be the father figure Fiona had once imagined, but he had proven himself committed to knowing his daughter. Monthly dinners, occasional weekend outings, and consistent child support payments had become part of their new normal. His fiancée, Rebecca, a warm, unpretentious woman nothing like Fiona had expected, had embraced Olivia with genuine affection. The Maquia bell above the door chimed as Elena entered with her husband and children. The flowers look stunning, she exclaimed, embracing Fiona. Carmen, go help Olivia with the name cards. As the 2 girls scurried off together, Elena lowered her voice. Did you tell him yet? Fiona shook her head, nervously touching the small velvet box in her pocket. Tonight, after everyone leaves. Finally, Elena sighed dramatically. My brother has been insufferable these past months. The man is clearly desperate to make things official. Javier and Fiona's relationship had transformed gradually, almost imperceptibly, from friendship to something deeper. There had been no dramatic declaration, no single moment of realization, just a series of small shifts, lingering glances, hands brushing together, conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. Their first kiss had happened in this very room, late one night after a particularly successful holiday rush, surrounded by the remnants of gingerbread and spiced wine. Now, nearly 18 months into their relationship, they had developed a comfortable rhythm. Javier spent most nights at Fiona's house, teaching Olivia to make his grandmother's tortillas on Sunday mornings and helping with science projects. They operated as a family in all but name, a fact that had not gone unnoticed by their friends and employees. "Did Lucas confirm he's coming?" Elena asked, arranging wine glasses. "Yes. With Rebecca and her son," Fiona replied. "It's important for Olivia to see us all together, celebrating something positive." The door opened again, bringing a rush of guests, staff from both restaurants, food critics who had become friends, suppliers who had taken chances on them when they were just starting out. Among them came Lucas, Rebecca, and her 10-year-old son, Tyler, bearing a bouquet of lilies and a carefully wrapped package. "Daddy!" Olivia called, running to hug Lucas. The title still felt strange to Fiona's ears, but she couldn't deny the joy it brought her daughter. "There's my girl," Lucas said, lifting Olivia and twirling her once before setting her down. "You look beautiful." "Like a princess," Rebecca added warmly. Lucas approached Fiona, offering the lilies. "Congratulations. The write-up in Food and Wine was incredible." "Thank you," Fiona said, accepting the flowers. "I'm glad you all could come." The awkwardness that had once defined their interactions had mellowed into something approaching cordiality. They would never be friends, but they had found a way to exist in each other's orbits for Olivia's sake. Javier arrived last, having overseen final preparations at Raisi's before joining them. His eyes found Fiona immediately, lighting up as he crossed the room to her. The kiss he placed on her cheek was brief but tender, his hand lingering at the small of her back. "Everything's perfect," he murmured. The evening unfolded beautifully, a 7-course tasting menu featuring signature dishes from both restaurants, paired with wines from local vineyards. Speeches were given, toasts were made, and stories were shared about the journey that had brought them all to this moment. When dessert was served, an elaborate creation Fiona had been perfecting for weeks, featuring layers of chocolate, caramel, and spice, conversation momentarily ceased as guests savored each bite. "This is magnificent," Lucas commented. "You've truly mastered your craft, Fiona." "She always had the talent," Javier said, his gaze on Fiona filled with pride. "She just needed someone to recognize it." Lucas nodded, understanding the gentle rebuke. "You're right. I missed a lot of things I should have seen." As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Fiona found herself standing between the two men who had shaped her journey so profoundly. One who had broken her heart but inadvertently set her on the path to finding her strength, and one who had seen her potential when she was at her lowest. "Olivia asked if she could have a sleepover at our place tonight," Lucas said. "Rebecca's planning a pancake breakfast with Tyler tomorrow. If that works for you?" Fiona glanced at Javier, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "That would be fine," she agreed. "Let me help her pack a bag." After Olivia had left with Lucas and Rebecca, only Javier and Fiona remained in the quiet restaurant. They moved together in comfortable synchronicity, blowing out candles and gathering leftover flowers. "Successful night," Javier observed, loosening his tie. "Though I think Elena went overboard with the champagne toast." "She's proud of you," Fiona replied, smiling. "We all are." Javier pulled her into his arms, his expression suddenly serious. "I've been thinking—" "Wait," Fiona interrupted, reaching into her pocket. "I have something for you first." She handed him the small velvet box, watching nervously as confusion crossed his features. Men typically didn't receive such boxes from women. Inside was a key, attached to a silver keychain engraved with a simple message. Time to make it official. Javier looked up, puzzled. A key to my house, Fiona explained, which I'm hoping might become our house. Officially. You practically live there already, but I want... She took a deep breath. I want us to be a family. You, me, Olivia. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to stop introducing you as my partner and start calling you my husband. Understanding dawned on Javier's face, replaced quickly by amusement. You're proposing to me. Is that okay? Fiona asked, suddenly uncertain. In response, Javier reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box of his own, this one containing a vintage emerald ring set in platinum. I was going to ask you tonight, he admitted, laughing. After everyone left. Great minds, Fiona murmured, tears welling in her eyes. So? Javier prompted, opening the ring box fully. Will you marry me, Fiona Walsh? Make official what I think we've both known for a long time? Yes, she whispered, allowing him to slide the ring onto her finger. Yes, to everything. As they kissed among the remnants of their celebration, Fiona reflected on the winding path that had brought her here. The pain of Lucas's rejection had once seemed insurmountable, a wound too deep to heal. Yet that very pain had forced her to discover a strength she might otherwise never have found. She had built something from nothing. A business, a reputation, a home. But more importantly, she had built herself. A woman who knew her worth, who refused to be defined by abandonment, who had learned that true love didn't flee at the first sign of difficulty. What are you thinking about? Javier asked, brushing a tear from her cheek. Just how sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best ones, Fiona replied. If Lucas hadn't left, I might never have met you, never built Dulcie, never discovered what I was truly capable of. His loss, Javier said simply. My infinite gain. Later that night, in the kitchen of what would now officially become their shared home, they baked together, a small tradition they had established early in their relationship. As Javier measured flour and Fiona whisked eggs, they planned their future in quiet, comfortable conversation. A small wedding at Raíces, a honeymoon in Mexico to meet Javier's extended family, perhaps another child someday. Fiona thought of the frightened young woman she had been, crying on her bathroom floor with a positive pregnancy test in hand. If she could somehow reach back through time, she would tell that woman, "This isn't the end of your story. It's barely the beginning. The man who leaves isn't your fate. He's just a detour on the way to where you're meant to be." As the scent of vanilla and cinnamon filled the kitchen, Fiona leaned into Javier's embrace, finally understanding that sometimes happiness isn't about getting everything you thought you wanted. It's about discovering what you truly needed all along.